welcome back to the first ever WeTalk Sundance. The idea was conceived here on this stage last year. I was speaking on a women in film panel, and it was the Me Too Time's Up rage all happening, and I was thinking, what about we do? What about the people that are shaping our culture? What about the women that are kicking ass out there? And went and talked to Dell afterwards, and by South by Southwest, we launched this show, which travels around the country and brings women together to make great things happen across everything from entrepreneurship to the arts and entertainment. And obviously, since this is Sundance 2019, we're going to focus on arts and entertainment. So this panel is going to be about making scripted films, producing, writing scripted films. And we have two very special guests from the film Before You Know It, which premieres here tomorrow night, and I can't say enough about it. I really, really, really enjoyed the film. It's so charming and so funny. So I want to thank Dell for being great partners to creators like us. We work on precisions in our office, and I'm constantly making films at the speed of light, and it's really important to have fast processors that understand what we need to do. So that's great. And also Majority, who are our partners in WeTalk, PMA, and Interloper Films. Thank you all for believing in this project. Okay. Hello.
Hi.
Hey.
Hello, gorgeous women.
Hello, gorgeous.
So Jen, you are an actor and a writer, currently starring in Hulu's Door Number One and Netflix's Six Balloons.
Yes.
Is that all true?
Guilty. Yeah,
yes,
that's right.
Guilty. And a co-writer with Hannah Pearl-Utt.
Yes.
Hannah Pearl-Utt and you have been longtime friends, and I want to hear that story because it's a great story.
For sure.
And you co-wrote this film, and you star in this film.
Yes.
And it's great.
Thank
you.
you.
I'm so honored to have you on the show.
Happy to be here.
Yeah, and Mallory Schwartz is an LA-based creative producer, has executive produced the Alec Baldwin show. He's in this movie playing a therapist. It's amazing.
He is, yes.
He
Yeah,
is.
a really bad therapist.
A terrible
He's not a great
therapist.
therapist.
Yes, that's not a spoiler. That's what it is.
Just a fact.
Yeah.
And you're currently producing the feature Blind, starring Demi Moore and Alec Baldwin. Is that true?
That actually already came out. So I produced that.
And it's out.
It's out.
It's out and
yes,
about.
It's out in the world.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's all find it. Blind.
Yes.
And so you all teamed up for the first time on this?
Technically, yes.
Yes.
I would say that I had produced a short that Hannah was in like 5 or 6 years ago.
Okay.
And so we had connected then. I was still living in New York. She was in LA. And so she was writing shorts that she was in, and I was always sort of consulting in her process along the way. And then she had told me about this script that her and Jen were working on, and I met with both of them. And, you know, I'm in love with both of them. They're incredible women. And so it really materialized from there. And so this was the first project we did together, but along the way, I would say that I was, you know, a consultant of sorts at most, and at least a very good friend in all other projects. So,
I mean, we all know the story of independent filmmaking and how it takes a long time. With a documentary, you actually have to be there and shoot it over that period of time. And then you're in the edit room for like 5 years. With a scripted film, you're working on the script like forever.
For 25 years.
Yeah.
About 25 years.
Yeah.
yeah.
And you're, and
Out of the room.
and you're
Just about.
You're at the. I mean, at least I made a film called Maplethorpe that's coming out very soon, and I was 12 years of just trying to, and I went to the Sundance Labs as well.
Oh, did you?
In 2010. So I wanted to ask you about that.
Yeah.
But you're at the altar so many times. You're about to make the movie, and then it doesn't happen, and sometimes it just doesn't ever happen. Most times it doesn't ever happen.
It's true.
Yeah, it's a concentric circle of heartbreak.
How long has it been? And in the making.
Okay, so truly, if I'm being in the spirit of transparency, Hannah and I met and we were waitresses together at a soul food restaurant in Brooklyn. I know. And we were friends first, and we were very young, and we were both actressing. And I was like writing bad 40s radio satires, and Hannah was making bizarre puppet shows out of tampons and condoms. She's really going to love me telling the story.
And you didn't dig each other at first.
We did not dig each other at first. Well, she didn't know that
you were great.
I'm of the sapphic persuasion, as they say. And she thought I was hitting on her friend's boyfriend at a party where we met. And I was like, no, that's not what's going on. And then we became really close friends. But we were working together at this restaurant. And I said, I think, I have an idea for this thing. And I had a Word document at the time with how I thought you formatted a script, which was, of course, completely wrong. It looked like a crossword puzzle. And
It's hard, though, too.
yeah, well, I didn't know. I went to theater school. I'm just a ding-dong who was like, I could do this. And at the time we had done really nothing in that space. So we started on it 8 years ago. 8 years ago. And then it kind of became a needle point that we would return to off and on. And in the earlier years before Mallory came on board, you know, I think it was more of the fanciful idea of just finishing a script together. And we really have kind of grown up with this movie. I mean, we've since produced a series together that we wrote and starred in for Turner, and we've...
started in a short that was in Sundance.
Yes, we had a short in Sundance in 2016 that we wrote and starred in.
But the series is Disengaged. People should look that up. It's really funny.
Thank you.
Great. Yeah.
But we, I don't know, we were very young, creatively speaking, at that time, and it's been a real privilege to start learning how to write anyway.
So that's 12 years ago?
26, yeah. No, it was 8 years ago.
So bad.
It's 8 years ago. It was 8 years ago, yeah. And then Mallory came on board 4 years ago.
Yeah.
And that's when everything changed.
That is, wow.
That's nice.
And that's how, why? Why did everything change when your creative producer came on board?
I just think she brought a sense of cachet and know-how, and also just the audacity of saying, we will make this film. Whereas before, it was like, maybe we'll finish writing the script together.
Right.
And
Takes a team to believe.
it does. And I mean, she's a total force and was
And it
like...
also takes irrational behavior and irrational thought.
Yeah, completely crazy people, yeah.
There's no reason to believe we can make this movie, but we're making the movie.
Sure.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, so let's talk about the Sundance Labs for a second, because I read when it was still called Stupid Happy, that Hannah called you in a panic because she had her first mentor meeting with the great Joan Tewksbury, who's also a mentor of mine. Joan Darling and Joan Tewksbury. I could
The
go on
Jones.
forever, the Jones. But anyway,
Grand Dames.
she said, whose story is that? Whose story is this? And you were packing your bags when you received a call from Hannah, who was in tears and ribbons
Yes.
over not really knowing the answer to that question and feeling like, what, you were going to direct you were going to star in, and she was going to direct
Yeah.
a bunch of scenes that you now needed to change totally. Or
Yes.
something, right?
We had-
Tell me why did she hit that crisis, do you think?
It's a great question. So the way the screenwriter and director labs worked, at least that year, was that the director labs were first, and then they sort of tacked the screenwriter labs on the end. So a lot of the directors that were there had also written their film, but in our case, I was coming to the director labs as an actor to shoot the scenes, and then I would stay for the screenwriter labs. So Hannah went a couple of days ahead of me to start at the labs. And I was, literally packing my bag, and I was so excited. And I was like, I'm gonna meet Robert Redford. My hair's gonna look great in the mountain wind. And my phone buzzed, and I called, and I was like, how are we doing? And she was like, I don't know what to do. And I said, what happened? And she said, they asked me whose story our movie was, and I didn't know how to answer it. And I was like, okay. And ultimately, what that conversation became was, because we were writing it with ourselves in mind, that old narcissistic song and dance, I think it flip-flopped over the years as to who would play which character, because the story is about two sisters, and they're quite different in how they move through the world. One's operating almost entirely out of mania and a sort of chemical disorder that makes it very difficult for her to stand still. I play that character. And the other sister is a bit more pragmatic and represses the pain that she experiences. But
The tragedy and the comedy masks.
The tragedy and the comedy
basically.
masks,
Rachel and Jackie.
But there was a time when we had said, oh, maybe we should go the other way, because in our series, I actually play kind of the reverse, and Hannah played the reverse. So that was reflected in the writing, and I think writing two protagonists in tandem that are that diametrically opposed became difficult tonally and thematically, because we didn't know from scene to scene whose story we were actually tracking. And so when Hannah was asked that question, I think she was already under such tremendous pressure that she was like, I don't know. And ultimately, we had to kind of pick one of the sisters to say, this has to be the hero narrative.
And so the movie opens with Rachel, the character Rachel, played by Hannah, walking down the street on a date, and a really hot lesbian kiss kicks off the entire thing. I should spoil alert.
True.
But it's
I also think a lot of the evolution.
You should just go for the kiss, actually. No, I'm kidding. And then Mandy Patinkin does this incredible job for a very short period of time, but as your father,
our dad,
as your very eccentric playwright father.
Yes.
Who, is, I had to quote it when I was preparing for this, but who just kind of thumbs his nose in the face of all etiquette, I suppose. And is like a child that you have to manage to some extent?
He's just never grown out of the theater world, I think. He's very much, in some ways, your guys' Rachel's son, really.
Is this one of your fathers, or how did the character?
Both.
An amalgamation, I think, of men in our lives. I think, honestly, it's a lot of large personality people who
Raise your hand if you're taking care of a man.
Take up the whole air in the room, you know, and how
Raise your hand if you're taking care of a man.
Yeah.
And both the parents, so Judith Light plays our mother and Mandy plays the dad, both the parent characters, I think, were in some way fashioned after both mine and Hannah's relationships with our parents. We grew up in very different but pretty unorthodox situations. I was raised in a Christian pop band in the evangelical South, and was gay in that world. So that was a bit of a jazzy experience for me. And Hannah was raised essentially on a hippie commune in Southern California. So I think moving through sort of these fringe communities had always informed the way we felt about family. And there's definitely elements, and I think all of the family dynamics that are.
I think the incredible experience about making this movie has been that it started off as obviously being so personal to both Jen and Hannah, and obviously 100% still is, but there's an element of it that's entirely universal. I mean, like every person on our crew, every person in our cast came into this, read this, and they were like, oh, this is my father, this, you know, it's more the dynamic between people, more so than it's, you know, my father's not in the theater, but we have a similar, you know, way that we deal with each other. I think there's a universality between the complex relationships between each of the characters.
It's interesting how that happens. Like if you keep a film really general, and this is why that panic struck Hannah, if you keep it, and when you're doing autobiographical stuff, it's so difficult to actually get that close to it. But if you keep it really general, it actually is not universal. It's when you get really intimate and into the nooks and crannies that people find the truth in their own lives, which is, I think, always has been really an interesting concept. But the Sundance Labs was definitely the most influential moment in my artistic growth, period, full stop. And so I'm just wondering, for those of people who are watching who reach a moment like that where they realize, oh my God, this script that I've been writing is really not where it needs to be, and I thought it was. What do you do? Like, what do you do then?
I mean, it's a tired cliche, but Kill Your Darlings, we did a page one rewrite 3 times in a row after the labs. And Hannah was definitely at the helm of that decision, because she's a bit more of a warrior, I think, than I am. I was like, can't we just make this one work? And she was like,
I think
no.
also, as a director, it's like she had to own what she was putting out in the world and making sure she knew what you guys were doing each step of the way. And so
right.
There's clarity to it.
And at that point, I think in the process, because we knew at that point Hannah was directing the film, she really took the bulk of the rewrites and was like, let me structure it. Let me, insert my voice and sort of get it in the place that I need it to be, and then I'll give it back to you and you can punch it up.
Yeah, that's actually a question I wanted to ask is, that must have been challenging, and for both of you, with Hannah starring in the film and directing the film, and I think a lot of people are always curious about that. What is it like when the star of the film is directing the film? How does that work?
I think it's probably different for Jen and I, obviously, because I'm dealing with her more as a director as soon as she steps behind the monitor, and Jen's dealing with her in front of the camera. I think it was going into it, we had a lot of time. I had done the creative producing labs as well. And so for the year and a half to 2 years before we made it, I think we were very conscious of the development of how we were going to go into production and making sure that we made it the way we wanted to make it and structured it that way. So one of the most important things was having still an indie schedule, but had a solid number of days to get done the kind of work we needed to do, which allowed Hannah the space to do both. And I think it was... She moves pretty seamlessly between the two, but part of what made that work so well, particularly on this film, I think, was we did so much work in prep between myself and our DP that there were many conversations that our DP and I were having that would be like, you told us what you wanted out of this, we got it, let's move on, and she would know when she wanted to. We had a director's monitor on set every day, which is not always the case.
She would go and check it after the takes?
Yeah, but there was a good shorthand of being like, don't watch that one yet. Keep
How many days did you shoot it in?
23.
Wow.
Yeah.
And is budget okay to ask? It's okay to
No.
ask, but
It's okay to
shall
ask,
be left
but I will
unanswered.
unanswered.
It was $33 million.
Yes. Yes.
33 million.
Yes, exactly. No, it was low budget. Low budget indie in New York.
Yeah.
And then for you, what was sort of the biggest challenge of making the film once you were making the film? Or like something you discovered that, did you even discover something about your character that was even new when it was like action time?
Totally. My character has a 13-year-old daughter, and so I was working with this fantastic actress named Una Yaffe, and I had never played
A mother.
I had never played a mother, not of an infant, so that was a bit of an assault on my ego. But it was
You
also
were a young mother.
I was a young mother, but it was really great. Character-wise, yeah, that was kind of a new thing because Hannah and I had been living in these characters for so long, and working with a young person, but she's brutally intelligent and really present, a great improviser. So I think exploring that relationship was new on set. But as far as working with Hannah, I mean, the three of us have such a shorthand and had developed that over the years that, I mean, Mallory was mind reading the entire shoot, truly. And sort of knew what Hannah needed before she knew she needed it. And I think with any other dynamic, it might have been a bit more challenging, but it felt seamless to me. It's easy for me to say.
No, I mean, yes, I think we did a lot of work ahead of time. I think by the time we got there, we all knew who we were, what we were doing, and how to communicate. I think it's just a matter of knowing why we're there and what we're trying to get out of something that dictates every decision you make. And if you're all on the same page as to what your goal is, then there is no decision that's difficult because you're all, deciding the same thing.
And then you're also dealing with an absent mother.
Right.
So a mother who you didn't even know existed.
Right.
Who is a soap opera star.
That's
you come
right.
to find.
Which
That old chestnut.
That is the original
That's really
premise
autobiographical.
that has lasted for the close to decade that you guys have been working on. So much else has changed. There's our production company's, our LLC's name is Magda in the Stream, and that's a character that died years ago. And we
Yeah.
still
There used
love
to be
her.
a whole Polish sub-story that's not there anymore.
it's
But
not there anymore. But yes, that storyline has been there.
So tell me where was the genesis of there was the eccentric father you have to babysit and the mother who's gone. Mm-hmm. Is this commune stuff from Hannah?
Maybe loosely inspired. I think it was more wanting to explore how grief manifests in different people, namely the sisters in this case, but then we were like, how do we put that in a pressure cooker? Mm-hmm. So not only are they grieving the death of the father, but they're grieving the realization that the mother they thought was dead had in fact abandoned them. Mm-hmm. So it's a sort of double whammy.
It's also, I don't know that it was ever very intentional from the outset, but something that we all really connected to is the idea that it's just reverse stereotypical gender roles too. I think a big piece about the mother leaving is she wasn't ready to be a mother and she chose her career over kids. And I think the way Hannah particularly directed that with each of the characters, no one is perfect and everyone is dealt with a lot of empathy and humanity, and there's truly no judgment to anyone's decisions. Mm-hmm. It just kind of is. I think the only thing it speaks to is have the tough conversations, at the outset, like choose discomfort over resentment. But in terms of who each of the people are, I think the mother is, I think you so often see the father figure maybe be the one who's coming back into the picture, and this was the opposite of that.
Right.
I feel like in the film, everybody's doing their best.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Everybody's
They really
just
are.
doing their best.
They are.
Except maybe Alec Baldwin.
He's trying.
He
He's
is
just trying
trying.
his OCD, yeah.
But I love the way you also sprinkle these little tidbits of truth. Like Dodge, the child, goes to the therapist and for her first session. And she just starts playing with the stuff on the table, which, if you've ever been to a therapist, that's usually what the trinkets are there for.
Mm-hmm.
Particularly
And he's like,
child
"Oh,
therapy.
If you could just put that back. Like he's super neurotic. And then he says, we make up all these mechanisms of control and wake up and realize that they're controlling you.
Yeah.
And then he's like, are you sure you don't have anything to say? And she's been trying to speak like the entire time.
Which is kind of a theme of the film.
Yeah.
Not as the child, adult or child alike, of a parent being so tethered to their mythology and sort of their ego that you're not able to speak.
Your own.
Yeah.
That you can't even listen.
Yeah.
Right, or see outside of that prism. Mm-hmm. And then I guess I'll end with the last question being about producing and how bringing this together. Like, how did you guys end up pulling this off? And do you have any advice for people?
Yeah. I think we had prior to the Creative Producing Labs, I think we had kind of humored many different avenues of how maybe best to get this made, and taken advice from our sales agents or just people in the industry who were like, cast this A-list person to do, that'll get you the money for international sales. And all of that is true. I think for us, what we found out is we had a movie we wanted to make, we knew how we wanted to make it and what we wanted it to be. And I think once you kind of decide that and say that you're looking for people who support that vision and who don't have ulterior motives outside of it, it made finding it and deciding who not to work with that much easier. Like I think
you did, and that's really important to be careful who you get in bed with. I mean, it's a marriage.
Yeah. Yeah,
and
many people warned us against having, like multiple EPs, or in terms of it's simpler to maybe work with one production company. But I think what we found is we have a wonderful team of EPs and wide ranging of, Donna and Kevin Grunike, who are Salt Lake City people and Park City people who just love the arts and are members of Sundance Institute, to Mary Jane Skalski, who produced Station Agent and many other things, and Tim Daly. There's a good array of people from different avenues and have different things to offer who, no matter what, really saw what we wanted to do and are in complete support of it and have just really let us take the wheel. And it's not that hard when you have wonderful people who want to do it with you.
I forgot the Tim Daly connection. He actually played Sam Wagstaff when I was at the labs with Maplethorpe.
Really?
Yeah, he's a really good old friend of mine.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
He's lovely. We love him.
So he
helped
came
us
on
out
and
a lot.
he brought, what did Tim do? He brought some financing in?
Yeah, he brought some financing in, and was just lovely enough that he decided to come play a really funny walk-on role.
Yeah.
But he's wonderfully
We
supportive.
know him from Wings.
I loved
Private
Wings.
Practice.
I had no
Secretary.
chill when I met him.
Yeah.
I don't know. I
He's
was
so
like
lovely.
Mandy, Alec, Judith, Olko. When I met
Yeah.
Tim, I was like, "Hey, I love Wings so much."
Yeah.
But I was not cool around him. But
Yeah.
he was very
All right, so your premiere is tomorrow night. Where is it?
Tomorrow night, 9:15
library.
p.m. at the library.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's very sold out, so don't even think about it, kids.
Monday morning too, 8:30 at the Egyptian.
Get up. Get out of bed.
Yeah.
This movie's
Please, yeah,
great.
please come see
Thank
it.
you both for being on.
Thank you for having us.
Jen Tullock and Mallory Schwartz.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, and then let me just quickly say what is about to happen. Okay, so you can grab your coffee, grab your cocktail. Maybe you can start drinking now. What time is it? Something. Fine. Start drinking if you need a little hair of the dog. We are coming back with Shooting the Mafia. I don't know if you've heard about this film, and Letizia Battaglia, but she was the first ever woman photographer in Italy who shot the Mafia fearlessly with like death threats on her life. Picked up a camera at 40 years old. Yeah, and then has shot the most gorgeous images. She's 84 with bright pink hair. She's coming with legendary doc filmmaker Kim Longinato and an Italian translator. Stay tuned.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.